Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the first edition of Academic Agent Retrospective, in which we'll be taking a look at some of my back catalogue after I've been on YouTube coming up to 6 years this year. And I thought it would be a good time because we've had a lot of new fans over the past couple of years who just haven't had the time to go back and have a look, or they're wondering what some of the in-jokes are on the channel. They're wondering about, where I came from, what my views were, all things like that. And I thought I would put together these compilations where essentially we do a little group watch of some of my greatest hits. And as that will help to bring in some of these newer members of the community, so that everybody has got some kind of common material that they all know about. Now, this first video, we're going to be focusing on Sadiq Khan. And speaking of in-jokes, this was always one of the kind of little meta jokes on the channel, which was that whenever any of my guests came close to matching my view count, for example, the Britisher, who was the original host of Unpopular Opinions, the original co-host, now of course it's John D, but it used to be the Britisher back in 2017, 2018 sort of era, or Rose of Dawn, who was a contributor to Unpopular Opinions, various others. Whenever they came in touching distance of me, I'd release a Sadiq Khan video, and usually it would take off, and as if by magic I'd get another 1,000 subs or another 5,000 subs or wherever it happened to be, and I'd pull ahead again. So that was and it worked pretty much every single time as well, so hence the running in joke about Sadiq Khan. So I kept on coming back to Khan as a way to hook in some new viewers, gain some new subs, while also doing this kind of little in-joke to my existing audience. So, and as I found out when I was interviewed by Alex Kashuda on her show Subversive, it obviously worked because she found me through a Sadiq Khan video. It's one of those funny things. Now, you're going to be experiencing some OG Academic Agent if you're a newer fan. You may not have seen the kind of vintage AA. I'll just kind of draw your attention to a few little quirks. One, wildly inconsistent sound levels. Whether it's my mic or the background music, or my audio was a mess in the early days. I used to put hip-hop backdrops to all of the videos, which is something I just stopped doing. In the end, I mean, a lot of people wanted me to keep the background videos, the background music in, but enough autists in the audience couldn't concentrate basically on what I was saying, so I stopped using it. What else? Oh yes, the George Sanders from All About Eve clips. I stopped using them quite a long time ago as well, but you'll see a lot of these vids from 2018 will have that. There's probably all sorts of little quirks of my old style that people will recognize, or that you'll discover anew as you watch through these old vids. All that's left for me to say, other than sit back and enjoy the show, is that all this week when I'm running these Academic Agent retrospectives, I'm doing a little tie-in deal on the Academic Agency, which is £100 off any bundle that you want. If you go on the site, you'll see there are bundle deals, and if you use the code RETRO, you'll get £100 off them. Not a bad deal at all. But yeah, I'm just doing this series basically as a kind of I mean, it's a bit of a nostalgia tour for long-time fans, but it's also a way for newer fans to kind of get acquainted with some of my old hits. All right, let's see how this goes. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist making this. Sadiq Khan is out of control and needs to be removed from office. Not content with doing everything he can to ruin the greatest city in the world, not content with banning Uber to appease the taxi driver union, not content with failing to track down known terrorist suspects and failing to crack down on radical Islam, not content with trying to adversely affect the markets by causing panic with his dismal and wildly hysterical predictions of the effects of Brexit on London, not content with causing a diplomatic incident by virtue signalling loudly on Twitter about how the people of London don't want the fucking President of the United States of America here, not content with any of this, now look at this. Today at the Fabians conference, I spoke with how we cannot allow a populist, anti-feminist narrative to take hold in Britain. Men must become better allies and progressives must fight back. Jesus Christ, I mean, for fuck's sake, do I need to say anything else? And this coming from one of the loudest and proudest defenders and apologists for the religion of peace. So how is Sadiq going to bring about equality for women in London, which apparently they don't already have? Take a look at this. Yep, that's gender apartheid for artists. It just absolutely sickens me that this total moron is running the financial capital of the world. How the hell can this happen? I'd honestly back a coup at this point just to get rid of this utter wanker. In case you missed it, here is Raheem Kassam absolutely destroying Khan from the other day. Enjoy it.
I'd just like to get your thoughts on the fact that President Trump has said that he's not going to be coming to the United Kingdom to open the US embassy.
Yes, well, I don't blame him. You know, you have a situation whereby Sadiq Khan, as the mayor of London, has really been tub-thumping, trying to get President Trump not to attend. Said multiple times he's not welcome in the capital, really fomenting a situation where you might have some riots or street protests if the president came to open that embassy. By the way, I think the president's wrong when he says that the embassy in South London is a bad deal. I think firstly, it wasn't Obama who approved that embassy. It was George W. Bush who approved that embassy. Secondly, it didn't cost the American taxpayer anything because they actually sold off a bunch of buildings to pay for it. So I think he is wrong on that. I think he should have come out and told the honest truth, which is that he doesn't particularly want to visit Sadiq Khan's London, which is the acid attack capital of the world per capita, where you have in the last year soaring knife crime, soaring burglary, soaring rape, soaring youth homicide. And Sadiq Khan seems to be concerning himself more with matters of state, which he isn't elected to do, than actually solving the situation of crime in London. And it is soaring. And I have to say this, and you'll excuse me for being churlish about it, but places like Sky News and the BBC and all the best and brightest journalists in the country are not covering this.
What do you mean?
Well,
every single day we are covering stories about whether it's knife crimes or attacks where they happen up and down the country. What proof do you have?
So Gamal, well, the proof is, can you answer me, at what rate did knife crime go up by in London last year?
I'm asking you, I'm interviewing you, what proof
I know.
do you have?
Well, I know. It's not great with the shoes on the other foot. Do you know how much youth homicide went up by in London last year? Have you told your viewers that? 70%. Have you looked at the mayoral's police and crime report from December the 12th? You look at that, almost every single measure out of 42, only 4 of them in 4 categories did crime go down. In every single other area, double-digit rises in crime across London. So you know what, to borrow a phrase from Donald Trump, London's turning into a shithole under Sadiq Khan.
I'd like to thank Son of Tiamat, Cult of the Lich, Charles Vincent and Edward Dara. Sadiq Khan needs to step down as London Mayor. Under his watch, London's murder rate has exceeded New York's for the first time since 1800 and in 2 consecutive months. Back in 2011, at a Fabian Socialist Society meeting, Khan said that it's important to show everyone that a progressive approach to crime is not just principled but effective. In 2015, he ran on a campaign pledge to cut, stop and search. Let's just see how effective this progressive approach to crime is, shall we? The statistics are not pretty. There were 19 homicide victims in the month of March 2018 alone. Khan cut stop and search by 21% and knife crime has increased by 31.3%. Acid attacks increased by 78%. Homicide is up by 27.1% and youth homicide a staggering 70%. Youth violence in general is up 19%, robbery 33.4%, home burglary 18.7%, child sex crime 30%, theft is up 33.9%. And what has Mr. Khan spent the last couple of months actually doing about this? How is he tackling this problem?
I am this postcode, this city.
I am important.
My friends will miss me if I were gone. I'm like the funniest person in the school.
My mum needs me alive.
She needs me alive.
My boys need me alive.
London needs me alive.
London needs me alive.
London needs me alive.
So I don't carry a knife.
So I don't carry a knife.
Chief of the London Met has blamed the soaring crime rates on, that's right, social media. While the clueless and the dishonest left talk about police cuts, the reality is that the London Met has only lost 3% staff in the past year, which is about 1,000 officers. Khan promptly allocated 900 officers from this depleted force to tackle, that's right, online hate crime. Yes, let's bring in the crack donut squad to take out the World of Warcraft troll, shall we? It doesn't end there. Khan has spent a total of £1.4 million so far on initiatives like that video I just played you. Things like theatre projects and, yes, of course, funneling money to mosques. What else has he been doing? Well, endless, and I mean endless, social justice virtue signalling. Reading out racist tweets, launching really cringe-worthy campaigns for women in technology such as #BehindEveryGreatCity, in which a group of women sat around and talked about why more women need to be in tech instead of, showcasing some actual technology that actual women had made. Of course, there was also his drive to get more BAME people into technology. In fact, he seems to spend his entire life hosting conferences dedicated to diversity that, well, don't look very diverse. As if to add insult to injury, during the month of March, in which, remember, 19 people were murdered on the streets of London, instead of actually doing something about it, Mr. Khan launched an investigation into the racial pay gap in the London police. I mean, you cannot make it up. Meanwhile, the streets of London see ever-increasing anti-Semitism and anti-British vandalism. Someone even wrote scum across Winston Churchill's face. While Khan virtue signals about diversity, the reality is that London is not exactly getting any more diverse. It's getting more of a certain kind of person, the sort we are continually told come in peace, but who march in the streets saying things like the followers of Muhammad will conquer America. And Mr. Khan seems especially keen on policing any criticism of these people, as ably illustrated by this meme. Now, I've been so angered by this, I even gave a passing thought to running to be mayor myself. My campaign platform would have only 3 policies. Number 1, reduce crime by doing a one-to-one copy of Rudy Giuliani's New York policy, the broken glass. Number 2, eliminate online police teams and reduce spending on hate crime to 0. Number 3, zero tolerance of radical Islam in the capital. Obviously, I'll not actually be putting myself forward for this, but whoever does run should make this their platform. And Sadiq Khan needs to do the right thing, step down and let someone who actually loves London and who actually loves this country take the reins. He's a disgrace and an embarrassment to the United Kingdom. Till next time. And a very special thanks to Sir Percy Blakeney, the Crimson Satyr, Nuri Nelson, Fonts, Graham Leggett, Ginger Bill, Michael Burt, Time Stealer, Blake Barrows, Charles Vincent and Edward Darragh.
It's not for me to censor or to decide what is in good taste and what is in bad taste, but Sadiq Khan looks like a really shit stunt double of Jose Mourinho. As a lifelong Liverpool supporter, I find that deeply offensive. To realise actually that here in London, there are many things that we should celebrate, and one of those is free speech. I say kill the Mayor of London, and you will be rid of one Muslim terrorist. Got the others? Muslims need to be shot or hanged. The Mayor is doing nothing about attacks. Muslims have no dignity. I wish Sadiq Khan would just blow himself up like they all do. He might get his 12 virgins. We as a city are grappling with the evils of terrorism. Like other cities, we suffered terror attacks last year. We unfortunately lost 14 people. They're still in our thoughts and prayers. Manchester also suffered a terror attack, lost 22 people, including young people. Paris, Nice, Brussels, Berlin, cities in America all suffered terror attacks. And it's for President Trump to explain why he singled me as the Mayor of London out and not the mayors of other cities and leaders of other cities. As Mayor of London, I wish someone would build a fire and throw you on it. You useless sack of shit. The submissions you want me to make?
Will you, Mr. Mayor, look after the interests of the Jewish population of London and write to the Home Secretary to ask for the clarification of the rules on what is a banned organisation?
I've been in close contact with the Met Police Commissioner. One of the best ways to protect vulnerable Jewish Londoners is to get more resources for the police service. That's what I intend to do. And if you want to join me in that, it makes my life a lot easier.
I will join you when you start doing your job, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for those answers. I'm sure Londoners will be fascinated with your lack of willingness to address this problem.
Well, can I congratulate you on that pre-written rant from you. It's appreciated.
Okay. If you want to check, I'll show you. You show me your briefing. I'll show you mine. All right? Okay. We'll have a deal on that.
Okay.
Calm down. Just calm down.
Mayor, that's my job. Okay. We'll move on. Thank you,
yes.
Assembly Member.
That's a useless answer that I've ever seen in this assembly.
Sorry, did you say something?
We will move on. No, we're moving on. We are moving.
This week, the repugnant national embarrassment and London's virtue signaller in chief. Remember the man who appointed a crack squad of 900 police officers to search the internet for hate crime, evoked the principle of free speech to sanction the flying of the now infamous baby Trump blimp in the protests today. Many have pointed out the sheer hypocrisy of this, given that few elected officials have ever done more to restrict free speech in the name of so-called hate crime than Sadiq Khan. Incidentally, tomorrow there is a pro-Trump march as well as a free Tommy Robinson protest planned in London, and reports are already through that the police are planning to crack down on this. Those marches are receiving near zero media coverage, and likewise few have picked up on the planned Khan blimp, which received £50,000 of backing in just 3 days. It remains to be seen if Mr. Khan will sign off on that one. I just want to remind viewers that this ridiculous level of virtue signalling from Khan comes at a time when London has been in the news for record increases in crime. My previous videos on Khan go into the specific numbers, but if you trace it using official figures from the Metropolitan Police from the day he was elected in May 2016 to June 2018, across nearly every category, crime has increased. You can see here, overall crime has increased. Theft is up. Robberies are up. Burglary is up. Sexual offences are up. Rape is up. Violent crime is up. Murder is up. The Sun, just 2 days ago, reported that there have been 51 stabbings since January so far in 2018. You can take a look at the names of the victims and the locations in which each of these stabbings have occurred in your own time. But the question must be asked why Mr. Khan remains so focused on attacking the leader of the free world when this sort of thing is happening under his watch. However, before I let you go, just a few more stats. Remember that when he was running for office, Sadiq Khan said he'd do everything in his power to reduce stop and search, which of course he did. Incidents of stop and search were reduced from 12,080 in April of 2016 to 9,468 in December last year, before all of this came to light. Now, interestingly, there are 2 categories of crime that have significantly reduced since Khan became mayor. Any guesses, anyone? One is possession of drugs, which has mysteriously plummeted, and the other is drug trafficking, which has similarly gone through the floor. Could it be that the rise in crime is because while they were busy browsing Twitter and Facebook looking for naughty words, the police are turning a blind eye to drug offences? We do not know how many of the current incidents are related to gangs or drug trafficking, but it seems incredibly suspicious that these are the sole categories of crime to be down rather than up since May 2016. All I can do is repeat my call for Sadiq Khan to step down and to let someone who cares about this city and about this country to take control.
A very special thanks to Cult of the Lich, The Crimson Satyr, Sir Percy Blakeney, Macadamia Nut, Stephen Thomas, Jonathan Eubanks, Mike Jones, The Ambivalent Onion, Time Stealer, Cosger, Holy Spatula, Tragic Vision, Michael Burt, Ginger Bill, Blake Barrows and Edward Dara.
I have made a number of videos on the current Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. People keep on asking me, especially those from outside the UK, why or how London voted for this man. Now, unfortunately, this does not seem to be a question that can be answered by looking at policies or his personality, for example. It rather and increasingly seems to be a question of identity, and specifically ethnic identity. In 2012, and in a fact widely celebrated in the media, London became for the first time in its history a majority non-white British city. The trend towards greater diversity continued after then. By 2015, the black and ethnic minority population of London was estimated at 44%. Incidentally, this was Sadiq Khan's exact share of the vote in the first round of the mayoral election in 2016. Some in the media, such as Richard Seymour here, took Khan's victory as evidence that the backlash against multiculturalism was over. It only took 2 years and an incredible increase in crime across the board for the far-left firebrand George Galloway to be calling Sadiq Khan a failed experiment. However, it's worth taking a closer look at the 2016 results, because we should be clear on who exactly is embracing multiculturalism with their votes and who is using their votes to conduct, to use George Galloway's words, this experiment on the capital. This is a map of Khan's mayoral win in 2016. The red boroughs were won by him, the blue boroughs were won by Zach Goldsmith of the Conservatives. Now let's look at a map of London broken into ethnicity. The darker red patches have populations of over 45% ethnic minorities. The pale beige patches have less than 1% ethnic minorities. Incidentally, I live in one of them. So we can see very clearly the whitest regions, and for lack of a better phrase, the BAMEiest regions. This appears to have been an active strategy on Labour's part, who ran two other candidates, David Lammy and Diane Abbott, both of whom are black, and they eventually lost out to Khan, of course. But on the theory that demographics are destiny, this is perhaps unsurprising, given that the Asian population in London is bigger than the black population. Anyway, let's put the two maps side by side. There we go. And I'm just going to use my favourite program, MS Paint, here to draw a rough shape around the boroughs that voted for Khan and those that are most densely BAME. You can see the similarity in the shape, and the trend becomes even harder when you look at the percentage win for Khan. The darker blue colours here represent a bigger win for him. Let's put that side by side with the ethnicity map, and you can see once again that the darkest blue areas on the right correspond with the darkest red areas on the left. In 2016, the Financial Times ran analytics on polling and voting data and found that there was a pretty strong correlation between areas with ethnicity white non-British and voting Labour, and conversely a strong correlation between ethnicity not black and voting Conservative. Now in 2012, remember that Boris Johnson won a second term as Mayor of London, but in 2016 Khan flipped three boroughs that had previously voted for Johnson. These were Wandsworth, Merton, both in the southwest of London there, and Enfield up in North London. Now, you'll have noticed that much of the ethnicity data we've been drawing from so far is dated to 2011, which was when the last census was held. But we can assume that the ethnic minority population in London and in these boroughs specifically increased from 2012 when Johnson won to 2016 when Khan won. Well, actually, we don't even need to assume. There is some data available. First, let's look at migration patterns. London has a net negative internal migration. This means more locals who are much more likely to be white British move out than move in. Meanwhile, international migration is a net positive. You can see the population of London rising in every age category, 5.7% on average, but look at the 0 to 15 age bracket there, an 8.3% rise from 2011 to 2015. That's your international immigrants having lots of babies. Let's drill down into each of these three boroughs that flipped. Here's Wandsworth, and you can see that they projected demographic increases of between 22% and 52% for ethnic minority groups between 2001 and 2021. Similar projections in Merton, where the ethnic minority population was 37% in 2014, but they expect it to be 40% by 2020. Likewise in Enfield, which if you remember in 2010 on the map was a relatively white area, with 40.5% of the population marked white British in the 2011 census. At the last estimate, that number was down to 35%. So you can see that this is not simply a trend, but a rapid change. For the white British population percentage to decrease by 5% in Enfield in less than 10 years is a major demographic shift. So, by all current projections, London is set to get ever less white British and ever more BAME. Sadiq Khan is up for re-election in 2020, assuming he's dropped his ambition to become leader of the Labour Party and runs again. And it seems to me that despite his awful record on crime and his spectacular lack of actually doing anything beyond virtue signalling, simply will not matter to these ethnic minority voters who appear to be voting in ethnic solidarity rather than on policies or results. That is, the vote is based almost exclusively on identity rather than on political ideology or even personality, given that Mr. Khan has no discernible charisma or even basic skills of public speaking. So yes, I'm afraid it's perfectly possible that we'll still have Sadiq Khan as mayor as late as 2024.
A very special thanks to Cult of the Lich, The Crimson Satyr, Sir Percy Blakeney, Macadamia Nut, Stephen Thomas, Jonathan Eubanks, Mike Jones, The Ambivalent Onion, Time Stealer, Cosger, Holy Spatula, Tragic Vision, Michael Burt, Ginger Bill, Blake Barrows and Edward Dara.
Sadiq Khan is taking back control. Rent control? Rent control is among the best understood issues in all of economics, and, among economists anyway, one of the least controversial. Do you know who said that? Paul Krugman said that. That's right, folks. Economists from all over the political spectrum, left and right, have understood for decades that rent controls do not have their desired effects. The artificially low price of rent pushes up demand because now more people think they can afford to live there. In fact, all you've done in real terms is to change the method of rationing living spaces. As Milton Friedman and George Stigler put it back in 1947, you've changed it from a price rationing system to rationing based on chance and favoritism. Hey, maybe if you're lucky enough to know the mayor personally, he can pull a few strings, huh? Rent controls also reduce supply because they reduce value. Toronto, for example, imposed rent controls in 1975 and affected building values fell by 40% over 5 years. As a result, constructors and developers no longer think their projects are financially viable and therefore switch either to building uber luxury housing or to commercial properties. And so the net effect, almost immediately, is to create a shortage in housing. In Melbourne, Australia, after World War II, not a single new apartment was built in 9 years of rent control. After rent control was instituted in Santa Monica, California in 1979, building permits declined to less than 1/10 of what they were just 5 years earlier. A housing study in San Francisco in 2001 found that 3/4 of its rent-controlled housing was more than half a century old, and 44% of it was more than 70 years old. Under rent control in England and Wales, privately built rental housing fell from being 61% of all housing in 1947 to being just 14% by 1977. During 8 years of rent control in Washington, D.C. during the 1970s, that city's available rental housing stock declined absolutely from just over 199,000 units on the market to just under 176,000 units. After rent control was introduced in Berkeley, California, the number of private rental housing units available to students at the university there declined by 31% in 5 years. Within 3 years after rent control was imposed in Toronto in 1976, 23% of all rental units in owner-occupied dwellings were withdrawn from the housing market. On top of that, the behaviour of renters changes so that you get people occupying larger spaces than they need to for a longer period. In San Francisco in 2001, a study showed that 49% of that city's rent-controlled apartments had only a single occupant, while a severe housing shortage in the city had thousands of people living considerable distances away and making long commutes to their jobs in San Francisco. Meanwhile, a census report showed that 48% of all households in Manhattan, where most apartments were under some form of rent control, are occupied by only one person. New York City has had rent control for longer and more stringently than any other major American city. One consequence has been that the annual rate of turnover of apartments in New York is less than half the national average, and the proportion of tenants who lived in the same apartment for 20 years or more is more than double the national average. As the New York Times summarized the situation, New York used to be like other cities, a place where tenants moved frequently and landlords competed in rent empty apartments to newcomers. But today, the motto may as well be, no immigrants need apply. While immigrants are crowded into bunks in illegal boarding houses in the slums, upper middle class locals pay low rents to live in good neighborhoods, often in large apartments they no longer need after their children move out. Meanwhile, the behavior of landlords also changes with rent controls because the incentives have been removed for them to maintain their properties as they might have. So the actual living spaces deteriorate and in some cases are even abandoned. It has been estimated that there are at least 4 times as many abandoned housing units in New York City as there are homeless people living on the streets there. Of course, Sadiq Khan, he knows all this, but he has to tell all those people who are almost certainly going to elect him again next year that he's done something in his time as mayor, doesn't he? And naturally, they'll gobble it up and he will be mayor again. Now get out. Jeremy Clarkson has written an amazing tweet. It's only 5 words long, but does it pack a punch? So let's see what our old friend Sadiq Khan has been up to, shall we? Last time we looked, London was a complete mess. So has anything improved for 2019? Well, knife crime increased by 52% since Khan became mayor. Residential burglaries are up by 37%. Robberies are up by 59%. There were 135 murders in 2018. That's a 26% increase since 2016. there have been over 50 murders already in 2019 as of the 7th of June. This is the highest homicide rate in over a decade for London. Khan was given a budget to build 116,000 affordable new homes. He has only started construction on 30% of them. He has wasted £83 million, including 400,000 on a beach party and £10 million for police officers to take a test to assign their personality a colour. He pays a PR firm £13 million a year using public finances. He has cost the TfL £640 million by freezing fares so they are not keeping up with inflation. Meanwhile, TfL employee costs have increased from £4.9 million to £10.8 million since he took over as mayor. He's also failed to reduce the cost of bus travel as he promised. On the subject of his promises, he still failed to plant 2 million trees as promised. He's failed to set up his own energy company as promised. He's failed to end strike action as promised. So what the hell has Sadiq Khan been doing? Well, exactly as he was last year, just getting into fights with Donald Trump and John Cleese, virtue signalling and virtue signalling and virtue signalling. There is a petition calling for Sadiq Khan to be fired as Mayor of London. I have included it in the show notes. If you're in the area, I encourage you to sign the petition. This man is a disgrace and he needs to get out. Now get out.
And a very special thanks to Stetson F. Lionel, The Ambivalent Onion, Christopher Scholholm, The Crimson Satyr, Chris, Kieran Hayward, Mr. A.M. Swainson, Radical Liberation, The Binary Surfer, Tragic Vision, Bailey and Aurora, Toyotomi Ami, Holy Spatula, Alexander, Froggy, Splice, Buck Egypt Society, Michael Mear, Jay Greenriver, Michael Tynan, Heronius Napalm V, Vincenzo Rapio and Edward Dara.
A common defence from apologists of Sadiq Khan is that the sharp increase in violent crime in London since he became mayor is because of cuts to police numbers. They claim he has no power to do anything. This is nonsense, and in this video I will explain why. First of all, let's look at the facts. The Commissioner of the London Met reports in directly to the Mayor of London. The Mayor was given a direct mandate for policing in London in 2011. The Mayor is responsible for setting the strategic direction of policing in London through the Police and Crime Plan. He manages their resources and has direct oversight. Yes, the budget is set from Westminster, but what is to be done with that budget is decided by Khan himself. For example, he set up a hate crime hub dedicated to looking for offensive language on the internet at a total cost of £1.73 million. When Boris Johnson was the Mayor of London, he strongly implemented a stop and search policy. This was opposed by leftists at the time and their media agencies such as The Guardian, even though it led directly to a fall in knife crime, as you can see them admit in this article, which complained that one person was being stopped every 3 minutes. But in hindsight, the results are obvious. If we look at this graph, we can see the record under Boris and the change at the exact moment that Sadiq Khan became mayor. Why? Because Khan ran specifically on cutting stop and search. And I quote from September 2015, "I do everything in my power to cut, stop and search," he said. Here's possession of weapons under Boris and under Khan. Here's arson and criminal damage. Here are sexual offences. Do you notice a pattern? Many Khan apologists will point to overall police numbers as the problem. But there are two major issues with this narrative. First, it's only really London that has seen such a dramatic increase in knife crime, as you can see in this graph, which compares the per 100,000 rate in different regions. Second, they need to explain how Boris managed to produce such a fall in crime when he faced a 5.7% decrease in frontline officers from 2010 to 2014, while Khan has enjoyed a 3.3% increase in frontline officers since 2016. Remember also that he is in charge of how resources are allocated. In Cheshire, 94% of police officers are frontline officers. In London, it's only 71%. When Khan complains about cuts, it's mostly about civilian staff which are being lost, as you can see here in a report from The Guardian. And as we saw, Khan has actually gained frontline officers and not lost them. So if you catch anyone peddling these bogus narratives about the real causes of crime increases in London, just send them this video, because whether they like it or not, facts are facts. Now get out.
And a very special thanks to Stetson F. Lionel, The Ambivalent Onion, Christopher Scholholm, The Crimson Satyr, Chris, Kieran Hayward, Mr. A.M. Swainson, Radical Liberation, The Binary Surfer, Tragic Vision, Bailey and Aurora, Toyotomi Ami, Holy Spatula, Alexander, Froggy, Splice, Buck Egypt Society, Michael Mear, Jay Greenriver, Michael Tynan, Erroneous Napalm V, Vincenzo Rapio, and Edward Dara.
Why don't we see what our old friend Sadiq Khan is up to? Oh, he's made a tweet. Diversity makes us stronger. Diversity makes us smarter. Diversity makes us who we are. Let's see what the replies to this are then. Don't tell him about IQ statistics. Repeat meaningless slogan. Race grift. Diversity brings FMG. Diversity brings grooming gangs. Diversity brings atrocious Islamic terrorism. Londonistan is done. Oh. 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 There's an awful lot of right-wing trolls about these days, aren't there? And it keeps going. And it keeps going. And it keeps going. And it keeps going. And it keeps going and 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 going. And the thing is, I just stopped there because I thought it would be too much for a video, but there's another 30-40 pages of this. There's something in the air, but I'm not sure Sadiq Khan knows what it is. Personally, I'd just like Sadiq Khan to resign. Now get out. The London Mayor Sadiq Khan has a wonderful way with words, and in this video we're going to learn what words mean with Sadiq Khan and the help of some pictures. You see this is called body shaming and, quote, unrealistic body expectations. And in his infinite wisdom, our much-loved mayor saw it fit to ban this advertisement from London back in 2016. Women everywhere were grateful to him that they were no longer shamed by being subjected to this filth. Quite right, Mr. Mayor, quite right. It's very important not to hurt the feelings of people in our great capital. Now let's look at another picture. What words can we use to describe this, Sadiq? This image right here means diversity. This does not shame anyone's body. This does not give us unrealistic body expectations. This is diversity. Learn the word bigot. Diversity. An image like this must be described as bold and empowering. Learn the words bigot, bold and empowering. Remember, body shaming, unrealistic. Say the words body shaming, unrealistic. Now, diversity, bold, empowering. Say the words bigot, diversity, bold, empowering. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm very pleased that we have a mayor like Sadiq Khan who can teach us the meanings of words in this way. When I look at him, I think he's very diverse. He's bold and he's empowering. Now get out. National embarrassment and international laughingstock, Sadiq Khan has bankrupted Transport for London. Such has been his flagrant disregard for basic economics that his mismanagement of the city has now resulted in him having to go to Boris Johnson to beg for a bailout. Who could have seen this coming? Well, me actually, back in June 2019. Take a look at this.
He has cost the TfL £640 million by freezing fares so they are not keeping up with inflation. Meanwhile, TfL employee costs have increased from £4.9 million to £10.8 million since he took over as mayor. He's also failed to reduce the cost of bus travel as he promised.
If you spend more than you take in, of course, eventually you will run out of money. And now the egregious weasel Khan is using the coronavirus as cover for his own inept management of the city's resources. They are currently running a £600 million a month deficit, and money is set to run out unless big bucks daddy Rishi Sunak finds another magic money tree somewhere. In addition, he's had to raise fares again citing COVID-19, but as Sean Bailey, his mayoral rival, has pointed out, this is a flagrant lie. His initial price freeze, keeping ticket prices below inflation while doubling staff wages, is clearly the ultimate thing to blame here. And let's not even get into the awful crime situation in London again. And so I call, as I have so many times before, for Sadiq Khan to resign. Sadiq Khan resign. Sadiq Khan resign. Now get out.
Cressida Dick has been one of the worst commissioners of the Met Police of all time. Under her careful watch, the police force took a knee when thugs caused havoc on the streets and vandalism to the nation's heritage and monuments. At the same time, a two-tier system emerged as innocent anti-lockdown protesters have been treated to police brutality. There have been over 100 homicides in London every single year since she was appointed by Sadiq Khan in 2017. Last year alone, over 30 under-18s were killed. Over 75% of acid attacks in Britain occurred in London since 2017. 2021 was the worst year for gun and knife crime in London since records began. Confidence in the police in London has hit a 30-year low. Even putting the entire population under house arrest during the pandemic failed to reduce the number of violent crimes to below 218,000 offences per year. There has been a 17% rise in violent crime under the watchful eye of Dame Cressida Dick. All in all, London's first woke lesbian mayor has been a complete bloody disaster, as anyone with half a brain cell can see. So when I saw everyone's favourite mayor, Sadiq Khan, put her, quote, on notice this morning, I got a bit excited. But then, of course, we have to remember that Sadiq Khan doesn't even have half a brain cell. Do you think that Khan, whose recent bright ideas to cut down crime include pledging to decriminalise drugs and commissioning a big, expensive and useless report on the link between poverty and crime? I mean, seriously, this total cretin went on a visit to Chicago's pin-up girl for bio-Leninism, Mayor Lightfoot, for tips on how to combat violent crime. Can you imagine who would go to Chicago for tips on how to reduce violent crime? Anyway, do you think this man called in Dick for a dressing down for her utterly useless performance vis-a-vis, you know, actually fighting crime? Oh no. Oh no. Dick has been hauled in because she's not woke enough. That she's not anti-racist enough. She's not anti-sexist enough. She's not anti-homophobic enough. He said that the Met needs urgently to show it has an effective plan for restoring the trust and confidence of Londoners in the police and to drive out the culture of racism, homophobia, bullying and misogyny, which clearly still exists within its ranks. This was after a few stray comments were found in a WhatsApp group between a couple of officers. So, in the face of ever-rising crime rates, increasing violence in the hellscape that is London, that's right, Khan's top priority is to purge the Met Police of racists. In the total state, all statements, all aims, all institutions must be devoted to do nothing but repeat the political formula of the ruling class. Equality, diversity, inclusion. I mean, God forbid the police would actually do any actual police work. When we see public trust in the police is at a 30-year low, does anybody in a million years think it is because that the public believe that the Met Police, this Met Police, that's right, this Met Police, does anybody really believe that this force is institutionally racist or sexist? If Cressida Dick does go, can you imagine what sort of abomination will be more insufferably woke than she is? London is the capital city of a nation that seems to have given up any semblance of sensible policy or governance that actually benefits any of the people that the state is supposed to serve. Our ruling class is hell-bent on committing suicide. Sadiq Khan is a poster child for this sort of out-of-touch globalist elite.
Clear them out. Clear out. Clear them out. You've got to clear them out. You've got to clear them out as well. There needs to be a new start.
There are no political solutions. Labour have gerrymandered London's political boroughs in such a way that they can stuff their council estates full of migrants eager for ever more handouts, ever more largesse from an ever-shrinking pool of national wealth at a time of record inflation. This isn't going to stop until people find a way to make it stop. Of course, the pandemic serves as a useful distraction from all of this. While everyone is worried about mask mandates and the vaccine and so on, they aren't paying attention to Khan's reign of terror in the capital. Anyway, black cab for Cressida. Time for a new, useless, woke managerial diversity hire to take her place. If you like what I do on this channel, I now run the academic agency where you can find a real education of the sort not offered by our intellectually bankrupt institutions of so-called learning. Hundreds of people have sharpened their skills of writing, logic and rhetoric by getting the trivium, so buy it now. You can also join the channel, subscribe to my Substack, buy a mug, or just click like and subscribe. It means so much. Now get out.